Autodesk Inventor, doing some more extrusion work. We're going to use the Extrude Cut command in this one. If we take a look at what our part looks like, here we go. Looks a little bit like a brick. I've got this shape here, and I've got those square cuts in the shape. Going to go, great, that's what I want to build. If we look at it, it's 3 inches by 1/2 inch by 1 inch deep. I go, these little squares here, they're 3/8 by 3/8, spaced a 1/2 inch over, 1/2 inch over, and we're set pretty much right on the center line there. All right, let's go ahead and go over here and build that part. Click on New, go to a standard part. I click on the box command. I go onto the XY coordinates. I click in the center here. What was that shape? It was 3 by 0.5, right? And the depth on the part was 1 inch, and it already went there. I click on the house over by the view cube, and there we go. If you notice over here, it shows the extrude command here. And if I expand this out, it shows the sketch. You can see the sketch there. If I want to edit that sketch, I need to double click here. If I click on the Start Sketch, it will start a brand new sketch that has nothing at all to do with the sketch that I want to edit. I double click the sketch. I can double click on the dimension. I can go in and change it. We know that's what we want. So I go, nope, don't do anything there. Tell it to finish. I go back into my 3D, and then I'm going to collapse this down. I have this model tree over here, so it gives me a history of what's going on. All right, let's get those boxes cut in there. I'm going to click on this surface. I'm going to use the rectangle command. I'm going to draw a box here. Tell it to dimension the box so that it is 0.375 by 0.375. And then I'm going to tell it to dimension it so that from here to here is, what was that? Do you remember? It was 0.5, I believe. If you notice, we're not quite centered up here. I'm going to show you a trick on centering things up to an object. I know that this is 1 inch along this height here, and that my box is 3/8 of an inch. If I subtract one from the other, it will give me the total distance of gap that I will have on this. If I divide the total by 2, it will spread the total out above and below the box. All right, sounds complicated. It's not that hard. Here we go. I tell it that I want to go from here to here, right? I click it, and then I do a formula. I go open parentheses. I know that the overall height is 1. I subtract the height of the box, 0.375 from that. That will give me the total difference, and then I go divided by 2, and it will automatically center the part up. This is a trick that we'll use over and over and over again while we're doing these packets in Inventor. All right, I've got my first box there. I want to put in my second box. I click on that box command, and if you look, it's starting to give me a line there so that it helps me to line up. So I know that I'm the same there and the same there. And I'll bet you we're really close here on this being 0.375. Yep. And I go across the top here. Want that to be 0.375. Press enter. There we go. Put my next box in there. Click on my rectangle command. I'm going to come way over here and go right in there. Put my lower one in there. I've got my box in and go, all right, here is 0.375 by 0.375. You know it's got to be 0.375. There it is. Now I could have built those driven them with the dimensions there also. I did it this way intentionally so that you could see how that was lining up, and that I was being able to come back in and redimension something. This side over here is also offset a 1/2 inch, right? So now I've got my 2 end boxes in place, and now I've just got this last one to get in place. Remember what our overall distance was on this? I'm going to right click, click OK, and I want to check that distance. If I can go down and put a dimension on it, but if all I want to know is that dimension, I can come in and right click on that line and ask it to give me a measurement. Now the window popped up on my other screen, but it shows me it is 3 inches. So I tell it, great, good with that. So I'm going to go 3 inches, right? So if I go the distance from this point to this point, should be that same formula, right? I go open parentheses, I use the formula, overall length is 3 minus 0.375, close, and divide that difference by 2, and it should center my part right up. There we go. Now, is it really centered? When we right click, tell it OK. I'm going to use that measure command again. Right click, tell it that I want to do a measurement. I'm going to say, what is the distance from this point to this point? And it shows me that it's 0.438. Still in that measure command, right? I click here, and it tells me that one's also 0.375, or excuse me, 0.438. There we go, get it out. All right, and I am finished with this. I've got my geometry on there. I'm now ready to make a cut through there. I'm going to use the extrude command. Here's a little tip. If I'm doing Inventor, I use extrude to join or add material. I also use the extrude command to cut material. When I'm in SolidWorks, I have an extrude join, which will add material, and then a separate button that is extrude cut. Inventor has it in one place. SolidWorks has 2 different icons. Same thing. I go in here to my profiles. I click on my profiles. You can see that that is definitely not a cut. What I want to do is actually tell it, instead of coming out away, I want to push it back the other direction. As soon as I do that, it moved from the join material to the surface to the cut material. So I can choose between these two. If I would have done it the other way, watch this, I'm going to go cancel, come back here, go to extrude, and if I click on the profiles, there we go, there's those 3 blocks coming up. They're going the wrong direction. Instead of telling it to go the other direction, if I just click on cut, it will automatically know that it needs to go the other direction. Well, if you look, you can see that it's actually longer than what needs to be. It's actually trying to do a 1-inch cut. Well, that's good. That gets us through there. But what I want to do is change the extents that I'm doing, change it from a distance to a command of all. All right, I click OK, and I can grab this now, and with my tools over here, I can free rotate this around and definitely see that those holes are cut. So we haven't talked much about this bar over here. We're going to use that a little bit more as we get further into things. Go back to the house. There we go. There's my shape. I'm going to turn off that free rotate. I'm going to change my visibility on this by coming over here, and if you click on this small arrow down at the bottom here, here are all the different features that I've turned on this view cube toolbar. So the one I want to use is right here down at the bottom, and it tells me what type of view I have. Right now I have shaded with edges, and I'm going to go in here and go shaded, go down here to frame with visible edges. No, that's not the one I want. Let's try one more. There we go, wireframe. You can kind of see the shape coming out of there. There's a wireframe. We get a little bit of an optical illusion. That hurts my eyes and is hard to see. We'll show it with hidden lines. But we can see that those are going all the way through there. Let me try one more view here. Wireframe with hidden edges. That's probably our best view, even though it's kind of has a hard time with all that shading in there. We can see that those are pushed all the way through. Remember, when I did the feature here, I told it to go through all, right? I'm going to click OK, take us back here. If I go back to my original drawing, or my original feature, and I double click on the sketch, I have this at a 1/2 inch, which is where I want it, but to demonstrate this, I'm going to change it to going 1 inch. So that just changed our shape dramatically. I click OK, and if we look, because we selected all, if I change that dimension, it's going to keep going through all. If I would have done it to a dimension on these cuts, then it would not go through all the way. I hope that made sense. I'm going to explain it one more time. By going in and using the all through all, it's going to make sure it pushed through all the way, versus a dimension will keep it at just that point, regardless of the change that I make. Let me go in here and illustrate that. I'm going to go back in, double click my sketch, tell this to make it 0.5, right? So now we're 1/2 inch thick, go OK. On this feature, I'm going to double click it to edit it. Instead of going all, I'm going to say distance. And on the distance, I'm going to say 0.5. Gives me the shape that I want, right? But if I double click and go back in, and I change this to 1 inch, and I go enter, finish. If you look, see, they don't go all the way through. They stopped at the 1/2 inch. If I go back in, double click, tell it, yeah, I want it to go through all, bam, there it is, all the way through. And I go back in and I'll straighten out my drawing here and say, this is supposed to be 0.5. Press enter, there it is. There's my part. Great. Remember, over here on the View Cube toolbar, we have these options over here in the right-hand corner. Click on that down arrow. You can turn some different things on. I'm going to go on here because I have my style views. I'm going to click on here and tell it to give me shaded with edges. There we go. A little bit easier on our eyes. All right, quite a few things in that in this video. Hope that you keep track of those and it makes sense. All right.